You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look me better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Naruto Enters One Upon a Time. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of pyrohelixdrago on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. With Naruto. Want a drink? Naruto offered as he held up a bottle of whiskey. Don't worry, I didn't poison it, he said to him. Thought we hated each other, Charming said to be angry. Considering I am the only one in town that can relate to you, I think us pouring our sorrows away may do us some good, Naruto said. Regina not taking it well, Charming said, feeling a little sympathy as they both lost their children. Let's just say she went through the 5 stages faster this time around, Naruto said as he had a lot of literal fires to put out before coming here. She's on acceptance, Charming said, not believing that for a second stages 1 to 4 he'd buy. Oh, I misspoke, she's fast pacing herself through the stages and going back and forth, Naruto said as his wife was on a rampage with no clear target besides gold, which he did enjoy watching her curse the man and try and burn his shop to the ground. Something he had to admit was impressed gold had so heavily warded his shop. Now that I buy, Charming said as Regina was definitely bipolar when struck with any kind of emotional pain. Both men discussed possible ideas but saw little to none given the hat was probably their only go-to. Next day. Why in God's name did I agree to this? Naruto asked, wearing a suit, feeling like an idiot. Well, I have been asked to step down from mayor and I thought why not have my husband be in the position of power like always, Regina said, winking his way. You're just doing this for more free time, Naruto said flatly. Yep, and honey, you may have something, but we need a witch to find our daughter, Regina said as Naruto had incredible power yet it wasn't fully realized she taught him a few of her tricks but he took to them like a fish to water. It was impressive. Alright, Naruto said to her, what the hell did you do in this job? He asked her curiously. Answer to the idiots, Regina said as she really screwed herself on that bit of the curse as she wanted a position of power. That's it, Naruto asked as he sat down at the desk and saw a few boxes. Did you seriously keep hearts here? He asked his wife incredulously. Just grams and a few idiots I used to have work for me better than using a phone, Regina said to him. Yeah, you are returning these. Speaking of Graham, where the hell is he? Naruto asked, not seeing him after the curse ended. In the forest somewhere, Regina said as she didn't have a use for Graham as he kinda went a little crazy without his heart. She thought about returning it to him but in the end she decided to just make him forget his troubles. With Tsunade. Does this place feel off to you? Tsunade said, seeing the camp and saw all the people working or doing some task but saw little to no interaction. This place is weird, she thought to herself. I assure you young lady this place is very safe, Philp said, helping Aurora down from her horse. The leader, who turned out to be Lancelot himself, came and greeted them, but he took a particular interest in Emma and Tsunade. And who might this be? Lancelot asked, looking at them. Oh, this is my daughter Emma, and that is Tsunade, she's Regina's daughter, Snow said as not many people knew Regina's name when she became the evil queen as she was just addressed as titles. Lancelot looked gobsmacked hearing this. Someone actually impregnated Regina? He asked the question sounding like it was asking more questions than it did. Yeah, and don't worry, we have nothing to fear from Regina, Snow said as it was still a relief to have Naruto back as Regina no longer cared about ending her life, though she may be on a rampage given her daughter is here, she said as she could only guess the amount of worry going through Regina. I should inform you that we have the girl's grandmother here, Lancelot said, careful not to say any names. Snow froze as the woman who started all this was here, the woman who made all of Regina's evil look tame. She cannot find out about Tsunade or that Naruto is alive, she thought as Kora was vain enough to try and do it again. She soon noticed Tsunade was gone and panicked. With Tsunade. I swear, what is this? Tsunade thought as she got a faint sense of magic in this place, but it felt like it was being blocked. Hello, a female voice said, catching the young girl's attention. Tsunade looked to see a woman who looked not that bad prison-wise, only her hair is messed up, she thought, thinking that was odd given the woman was wearing a dress and heels. Who are you, dear? The woman asked her. Isn't it polite to give your name first when you meet someone? Tsunade said as her father taught her manners and she got her etiquette from her mother. She could also tell this woman was sizing her up. My apologies, I am Kora, Kora said with a smirk. Tsunade Namikaze, Tsunade said to her simply. You know, you look a lot like my daughter Regina, Kora said, not wasting time. Tsunade knew who this woman was and slowly approached her with her arms spread out wide, and when she was inches away from the woman she punched her in the stomach and then uppercutting her in the face. Snow was saying, rushing into the cell only to find Kora on the floor coughing as she held her stomach and had a bloody mouth. Who the hell is this? Emma asked, taking out her gun. My grandmother, Tsunade said to her. The first punch was for my dad, the second was for my mom. You can rot here for all I care, but you are not hurting my family, she said in anger. Kora was both enraged and impressed her granddaughter had the gall to attack her and the magic she possessed, something she could feel. She was disappointed as she expected more decorum from Regina's daughter and thought her daughter raised her poorly with love, something she thought she killed and had die inside Regina. And then something the girl said got her attention. Namikaze, she said, feeling like she knew that name for some reason. My father's name, the one you tried and failed to kill, Tsunade said, stopping at the entrance. Naruto, she said to her grandmother. That's not possible, Kora thought as she knew she squeezed his heart, crushing it to dust that day. I don't know how he's alive and neither does he, but he's not some stable boy, Tsunade said to her grandmother. He has more power than you can comprehend, she said, walking away, as while her father's power seemed average to the ordinary eye, she knew even as a child much power lay dormant within him. She could often feel how pure and powerful it was. Well, this game certainly got more interesting, Kora thought to herself, wondering about the man she killed years ago. With Naruto. Naruto clutched his chest as he felt some phantom pain and fell to his knee, his mind going to his daughter. What the hell was that? He thought, breathing a little heavier. Be safe, Tsunade, he thought as he and Charming spent the rest of the day trying to deal with people, trying to deal with their curse and precurse selves. Few hours later. Why are you still my doctor? Naruto said as Regina caught wind of his chest pains and he was now with Whale. Because I am a doctor and I won't kill you, Whale said as he did violate this man's body decades ago and he felt like he was on better terms with Naruto. Yet you have no issue with violating my body, Naruto stated dryly with a blank face. That was for research purposes, Whale said as Naruto was literally dead when he last saw him. He still failed to understand how the man was alive even after the explanation he gave. That's odd, he said, listening to the stethoscope. What? Regina said as she wanted to know the state of her husband. Here, listen, Whale said, putting it on her. Regina rolled her eyes and smiled a little as she heard the beating of Naruto's heart, but being the person that she was, she knew hearts well and soon heard a second beat after the first. What the hell, she thought to herself out loud. What? Naruto said as his heart felt fine. You have 2 heartbeats, Regina said, looking at the doctor who shrugged, having no answers. Regina, can you? Naruto asked her as he placed her hand on his chest. Regina was both touched and afraid he so easily trusted her like this and felt unworthy of it many times, but she built up the courage and pulled out his heart. Whale said, seeing enough hearts to know that the one in Regina's hand was much too small and seemed like it was split in half. You're missing half your heart, Regina said in shock. Weird, Naruto said, unsure of how to react to the reveal. Well, he was dead. Is it just gone? Whale said, offering an opinion as he knew nothing about magic. Regina was saying, unsure of how to respond as Naruto had 2 heartbeats, meaning his heart's missing half was somewhere else. It made her slightly concerned as to why it was beating a different beat than the original. Hey, 1 heart or half a heart, this still beats full of love for you, Naruto said, placing his heart into her hands. Regina thought it was troubling that half of his heart was just missing and decided that after they find their daughter she'd shift her attention to this. Next day. Why'd I agree to this? Regina asked as she used her magic to manipulate the elevator. Because I had to come here and you had run out of ideas for a portal, Naruto said as his memories were slightly coming back to him as he felt he knew Maleficent after his return in the enchanted forest. "Wait," Regina said as she stopped. "Where the hell is the dragon?" she said, having a well-trained eye and knew Maleficent could blend in with her surroundings given her dragon body. "You mean the dragon you had locked away here," Maleficent said, appearing behind Regina in black smoke, and she immediately began grabbing a hold of Regina's melons through her clothes, raising an eyebrow. "My word, it seems you have changed in the decades you had me locked away down here," she says, kneading Regina's brst through her clothes. Naruto blushed as Regina's body did improve via the PRGNNCY and the many physical activities he put her through over the years and the countless hours he had spent GRPNG and massaging her melons during said activities. Regina blushed as her fairly large D-cup melons had increased to large EE cup as a result of both her becoming a mother and Naruto's working of them over the years, her body now looking more fit and her curves even more defined, with most of the weight now usually going to her large and plump heart-shaped peach, but she still felt inferior to Maleficent. Maleficent had a model body many would kill for, her melons were F-cups, her body seemed more model-like than Regina's, as her peach, while very thick and plump, was still CC and toned yet would still jiggle hypnotically when she walked. Then there were her wide peach, perfect for childbearing, leading to her thick yet not overly thick thighs and long model-like legs. "What's the matter, Naruto? You've seen me cup my melons," Maleficent said teasingly. "You be," Regina said, quickly catching on as Naruto had been telling her about each memory flash he had, and while they were brief and told them next to nothing, she let her mind run rampant on thoughts. He was a fox switching between man and beast, not knowing who he was or where he was going if anyone took advantage of him, she thought, not even finishing as she wanted to kill whoever did so. She quickly caught on that Maleficent had Naruto for a certain amount of time. "Oh, calm down, Regina, it's not like we haven't also shared a bed. Remember all those long nights I spent instructing you," Maleficent says, causing Regina's eyes to widen and a slight blush to form on her cheeks as said memories of those nights played in her mind. Naruto blushed now, having very RTC memories of him and Maleficent flood his mind even more so, thinking of both her and his wife. They began to discuss their reasons for coming here and also found out Maleficent found him in her territory when he had awoken, not hours after Regina found out his body had been taken. Maleficent agreed eagerly to helping find Tsunade, her answer being that she had imprinted on the little girl when she and Naruto fell down here. Flashback. Maleficent thought, feeling someone enter her castle, and when she went to check up on her guest, and saw it was a wounded fox and was surprised to see it shift to a man for a moment. "Is this a curse?" she thought to herself as she had turned Philip into a beast and sent him overseas. This is a poor curse," she thought as she saw that it was both affecting his mind and his body. She was surprised how easily she was able to pause it. Next day. Maleficent was rather bored as while she healed the man she looked through his mind what little there was of. She discovered he was Regina's lost love. "Maybe I'll keep him. Regina did steal some of my tricks," she thought as witches prided themselves in their work. "He's not from here," she thought as his memories deeper into his past were sealed, but she was able to peer into them briefly and found a particular memory that she enjoyed. "A man who has learned to be a part of nature," she thought, licking her lips as being a dragon made her greatly in tune with the force, and the power he had was incredible. "It has been a while since I have had a guest that I liked," she thought to herself. As Naruto rested, she looked outside and saw some of the trees be given new life, and the tree that was once still on fire ignited again, the blaze being even more intense. My even unconscious, your power is impressive," Maleficent thought as his power was amazing and was having trouble gagging his power as her instincts were excited, never having felt someone so worthy, and was actually looking forward to him waking up so she could begin talking with him. 1 week later. Maleficent was rather angry as she was in heat, something that was regular for her, but she had no one to attack or direct her rage since most of her enemies were suffering, so she had no one to torment. "Maybe I can vent another way," she thought to herself with a smile and lick of her lips, remembering a certain guest she had. She also remembered after certain activities with Regina she'd always praise her first love as being a beast, one who tamed her to being his pet in bed and one that ruined her, never craving any other man but him. "Well, let's go see if the rumors are true, or will he be yet another meal for this dragon," Maleficent thought, making up her mind with a hungry smile and heading to the guest bedroom Naruto was staying in. "Oh, he's already ready for me," she thought, seeing he was irked as he laid on his bed sleeping. "I can see how Regina was broken. He is certainly larger than all my previous conquests," she thought, seeing how large his member was based on how much his trousers were tented. Maleficent was soon covered in black smoke. her dress disappearing now completely naked as she crawled onto the bed next to him before making his trousers vanish as she began jerking him off. Naruto soon woke to see the blonde woman on top of him. "Maleficent, what are you doing?" he asked, seeing the woman naked and fstng his pp. "You see, I am rather hungry and have an itch that needs to be scratched. Though I must say I can certainly see how you tamed Regina with this mighty weapon of yours, but darling, all you're doing is laying there," Maleficent said teasingly as she wanted to play with her prey a bit as she let go of his pp and slid her wet pp down over it, feeling it spread her warm tunnel wider and reach deeper than anything that had been in it before, and getting a from Naruto in response as she began working her peach up and not only riding him but also dominating him. A primal nature soon awoke inside Naruto as he grabbed her by her peach and slammed her down on his pp as he moved his hips upwards to meet her, resulting in his pp slamming against her crvx and making Maleficent see stars from the sudden forceful action. Maleficent screamed in pleasure and delight as she loved having a lover who knew how to fight back, made sec more pleasurable and appealing. She placed her hands on his chest and rode him even hard, slamming her, rolling her peach down to meet his upward move, their skin clapping with each contact, her peach rippling from the force of each impact, and his pp slamming against her cervix each time their lowers met. The sorceress was surprised when she was letting out her first CLMX that he flipped her, getting her down on all fours. "He's trying to dominate me," she thought in surprise, amusement, and arousal, as no one had ever tried or even dared to try to take control away from her. A battle of dems soon took place, both of them trying to usurp the other, making the sec much hotter as every time she tried to flip them back over so that she was on top, he would tighten his grip on her peach, increase the force of his thrsts, and growl as he pushed the top half of her body down into the bed, her tips splaying out as they were pressed against the bed as he held the back of her head, keeping her down there as his savage thrsts continued. Then when he let up or pulled his hand back to grab her rippling peach, she would rise back up and try to flip them over, only for the process to repeat. They had for days, a clear winner never being decided as they attacked the other when they felt they were most vulnerable. Sometimes Maleficent would wake first after they each other until they both passed out from exhaustion and would start riding his still hard pp until he woke up and flipped them over. Other times Naruto would wake first and resume his pending of the dragon sorceress until she woke up, sometimes as a result of him suddenly shoving his length into her tight peach and pending away, resulting in the two resuming their sekathon. All too soon Maleficent's castle was reeking of sec, and Naruto sent something that seemed to please the dragon woman as she and panted as she gripped the ruined sheets of the bed, her face buried in a pillow. Her hair a sweaty matted mess with dried juice stains all through it, much like how her body was covered in sweat and dried juice stains as Naruto roared, firing off yet another juice of his somehow still incredibly thick and copious amount of juices deep into WMB, making the slight bulge in her abdomen more noticeable even as his juice leaked out around his pp despite how tightly her pp was gripping him. The combination of yet another cream pie combined with the beastly roar Naruto let out set off something deep inside Maleficent, triggering her own massive orgasm as her body spasmed, her eyes to roll up into the back of her head, and her tongue to hang out of her mouth as she and screamed wantonly in pleasure before collapsing back to the bed, her body still twitching sporadically, her last thought before once more succumbing to unconscious being, "He is a beast and I love it." 1 month later. Maleficent had to admit she was actually afraid at this moment, as the beast before her was ancient, even more ancient than her dragon power. She felt like time had finally caught up with her and that she was gonna die, especially since her companion seemed to have abandoned her. However, she suddenly was confused as to why it started backing up in fear and soon heard a growl and saw Naruto in his fox wolf form, but he looked larger, even bigger than a Nemean lion, and his eyes held such a protective nature and anger in them it surprised her. The Chernobog looked at Naruto and backed away, unable to see anything from him, which surprised the creature, and in its state of shock it didn't see Naruto charge at it, sending it flying and crashing into a wall loudly and painfully as a result of a single brutal punch from the blonde. Maleficent was surprised by her savior and saw him approach her before changing human and picked her up bridal style, and they soon disappeared in an orange smoke. Maleficent's castle. Maleficent was surprised to find herself in her bedroom, and before she could say anything Naruto dropped her on her bed and ripped off her dress. "He wants to F me," She thought, feeling rather pleased but also a little scared, as her dragon instincts were telling her he was not the same as before. The power he had was much stronger, and unlike all their previous SXL encounters where they would battle for Demps, this time she felt like his prey as she watched him eye her naked form hungrily as he ripped his own clothes off. After removing his own clothes, he climbed onto the bed, crawling his way up her body, growling the whole way, occasionally nipping at her with his teeth, namely when he reached her melons, giving each NPL a little bite before reaching her mouth and slamming his lips into hers as he possessively made out with the witch, conquering her tongue with his own. Ultimately he pulled away, leaving Maleficent breathless, gasping for air as he slid up even further, leaving her at eye level with his throbbing urchin, which she noted was leaking a bit of pre-juice, the scent of which invaded her nostrils tantalizingly. Naruto reached down and grabbed the back of Maleficent's head, pulling her forward so that his PP was resting against her cheek. SCK, the command was simple and quick, but the tone of it said of something deep inside the witch, causing her to not even bat an eye as she turned her head slightly, taking his PP into her mouth, both as a result, one due to the feeling, the other due to the taste. Maleficent was blushing, feeling like she was going into heat. Is he my mate? She thought, as dragons took mates, submitting themselves to stronger beings or often finding someone they deemed worthy and made them submit. Naruto's magic seemed to be growing more powerful by the second, making her longing for him grow as well as she moved her head back and forth, taking his PP deeper and deeper into her before reaching his lowers and taking his PP. Naruto was glad he let her keep her horned helmet as he grabbed her by the horns and slammed even harder, stretching out her throat, making a noticeable bulge in it every time his PP plunged deep into it and causing Maleficent to GG a bit and her throat to tighten around his PP. Maleficent, he said, making her as he called her name. No one else, he said, seeing the confusion in her eyes. Your body is mine, no one else may touch it, he said dominantly in a possessive manner. Maleficent's eyes widened hearing this, and her PP gushed as she simply nodded her head and increased the intensity of her eating on his PP, causing him to increase in the ferocity of his pulling her head, resulting in her eyes water and her eyeshadow running. If your throat is so tight and warm, must be due to your dragon side, Naruto says before pulling off her horned helmet, releasing her blonde locks and grabbing fistfuls of them as he increased his F of her throat, causing her to even more and start fingering her pages. However, several minutes later Naruto let out a roar as he pulled her head harshly to meet his lower as his PP expanded in her throat, nearly choking her as it began blasting rope after rope of thick juice down it, causing her to struggle in gulping it all down so as to not spill a drop of the delicious treat. Maleficent panted as he pulled out of her mouth, and she awaited his next command, something she never thought she'd do. I've been tamed, she thought in realization, as he was now her mate, the one she'd spend the rest of her life with. Spread your legs, Naruto said, seeing Maleficent obey him and saw her PP was dripping in anticipation, awaiting his PP to once more plunder her depths and claim them for solely it. Maleficent was amazed how fast he was on her, eating on her tips and pinding into her PP. All she could do was and take it, as clutching at his strong muscled back as her body was basically putty in his hands. She loved how rough and animalistic he was being, as she loved the primal F. Never knowing what to expect made the SEC that much more interesting. Suddenly Naruto stopped moving, causing her to look at him in wonder, only to gasp as he sat up on his knees, pulling her up with him before falling back on the bed with her now on top. Bounce, Naruto commanded simply while giving her peach a slap, sending a shiver of pleasure up Maleficent's spine. Maleficent licked her lips as she did as commanded, screaming as she had still yet adapted to Naruto's sheer size, and screamed as with every bounce he smacked her peach, not something anyone had dared to do, and to be honest she liked it very much, as Naruto was the only brave lover who had the guts to do anything to her. For what felt like hours Maleficent bounced, rode, and grinded on Naruto's PP as it stretched her walls and bashed against her CRVX, resulting in her near constantly. The only break in her from screams of pleasure whenever Naruto slapped her peach with one hand while he roughly groped one of her bouncing melons with the other, alternating between them occasionally. Suddenly Maleficent let out an ear-splitting scream of pleasure as Naruto grabbed her peach and slammed her down, forcing the head of his PP into her WMB, causing her to spasm in orgasm. However, before she could even begin to recover, she found her world flipped until she was on her hands and knees with Naruto behind her, roughly GRPNG and spanking her rippling peach cheeks as he resumed pinning her, leaking snatch her juices dripping out around his PP as he plundered her depths and landing on the bed, creating a large stain due to the amount she was releasing. As he pended away, Naruto noticed the air above Maleficent's head distort before a pair of black curved horns in a similar shape to those on her helmet. "Oh, and what do we have here? It seems like my dragon has been hiding something from me," he says, giving her Peach a harsh slap. "Oh," Maleficent said as she blushed, "my dragon's side likes to get out on occasion. My horns however only get out when I have found my mate," she said, as sometimes certain features, mainly her horns, appeared on her human body. She never minded or cared, but she did care what Naruto thought and hoped he wasn't displeased. She was surprised and pleased as Naruto seemed pleased with them, ever harder and rubbing her now sensitive horns. "Oh, so I am your mate, am I?" Naruto asks teasingly, giving her Peach another harsh slap before reaching up and grabbing Maleficent's horns, using them like handlebars as he increases the force and speed of his THRSTS into her PP, causing her screams and to get even louder. "Yes. You are my mate. My one and only." Maleficent began screaming and howling as her body was rocked by increased pleasure, especially since Naruto's THRSTS were forcing his PP into her WMB and crashing against the back of it with each move. "Holy FEISFMYWMB. Maleficent thought in her lust-drunk state. Over and over Naruto slammed into her, pushing her deeper and deeper into the kitty of pleasure. Sometimes forcing her upper body into the bed, making her Peach stick up higher, giving him more leverage, and having his PP repeatedly scrape against her G-spot, causing her to shudder in pleasure. Other times he would pull back harshly on her horns, making her back arch and her tips to bounce wildly in the air. Ultimately, their hours and hours of primal hardcore lovemaking, Naruto let out a savage roar as he slammed into an exhausted Maleficent's PP one final time, slamming up against the back of her WMB before his PP began leaking a massive amount of his juice into her WMB, filling it to the brim and beyond as it began to expand. Maleficent let out a ear-piercing scream of pleasure at feeling this, a scream that only increased in volume as she felt Naruto lean down and sink his teeth into her shoulder hard enough to break the skin and draw some BLD as his hands tightly grasped and squeezed her tips, making sure to pinch her fully irked NPL between his index fingers and thumbs. "He has claimed me," was the last conscious thought to pass through Maleficent's completely pleasure-drunk mind before she fell unconscious, with Naruto passing out right after her, his PP still buried and leaking into her spasming vice grip of a PP, both unaware of what was happening at the moment. Flashback end. Namake's residence. Regina felt nervous as, after having much carnal sex with Naruto and Maleficent separately, she knew she was basically about to have her world shattered with both the very strong animalistic humans. She was currently on her bed, laying on her stomach with her hands tied behind her back, her vision filled with Naruto's throbbing Erkin, while Maleficent was behind her GRPNG, her Peach. "Oh, how I missed this," mewed the Dragon Witch. She then glared a bit at Regina's bound form. "You have no idea how much I want this. And for now, it's all mine," she said, spanking the Queen's ass cheeks. "We are going to destroy you and you will beg us for mercy. SLT, I still remember when you were on your knees eating me out in my castle, the same castle your husband F me in," she said, amused and very corny. She trailed her finger over Regina's PP and tasted her juices. "Still taste so good and salty. Now you better get ready, as I have nearly 3 decades of torment to take out of your Peach," she said, amused, fiercely thrusting her fingers into Regina's Peach and PP. Regina blushed as she was once again at the dragon's mercy, the dragon that humiliated her, furiously making her do degrading acts in her castle, always trying to make her submit, always failing, as she solely belonged to Naruto. Maleficent smiled as, while she hated never having Regina submit, but she respected that Regina was loyal to her mate, she reached up and grabbed Regina's melons, teasing the woman's tips. "Still lactating," she said in amusement. "I guess you really are a sow," she said happily. "Ah, never stopped as Naruto kept eating on them when we made love," Regina said with an unashamed as Naruto never stopped giving every inch of her body appreciation and attention. Maybe I should milk you." "As part of your punishment," Maleficent said as she continued roughly fingering Regina, bring the Queen to a shivering orgasm and soaking Maleficent's hand with her juices. "Oh, it seems you like that, but it also seems you have dirted my hand, so clean it up SLT," Maleficent says, pulling her fingers out of Regina's spasming PP and forcing them into her mouth, making the Queen lick and taste her own release. Regina knew she was in trouble, as Maleficent was the second most DMing partner she ever had, and as much as she hated to give in, she would serve Maleficent, but Naruto would always own her and hold the most power of her. Besides, there was nothing stopping her from turning the tables on Maleficent later anyway. On the floor B. Maleficent said, putting Regina on her back as she sat on her face and made Regina eat her out. Now are you going to choke me? She asked as she saw Naruto was eager to F them. She was surprised when Naruto just took her and rushed his PP down her throat. The man I love, yes, that is so DM, so primal, I am weak to his strength, she thought lustfully as she was at his mercy. It seems Regina's skill in ORL hasn't diminished, the dragon witch thought as she ground her PP into Regina's face. Feeling her eagerly feast on said PP. Naruto was very corny at the moment, as seeing Maleficent play with his wife made him exceedingly corny, and it was taking all of his willpower to stop him from simply grabbing the back of Maleficent's head and slam himself ball into her. Enough teasing my CC dragon, Naruto says, getting Maleficent to blush as she began to show her love some love. Planting a series of kisses along his hot, throbbing length, Maleficent greatly wanted to taste him. Yet she had another destination in mind. Going further down, she reached his plump ball. She slowly fondled them, feeling the weight behind them, making her smile more. Before long, she began slavering his TSTCLS with kisses and licks before eating them with such devotion. As this went on, her available hand went down to her wanting gna as she began to finger herself. They would eventually glisten with secreting SXL fluids as she prepared herself with what's to come after so long. Popping out his ball of her hot moth, she leaped up to his pole and slowly took him. Bit by bit, she savored more of his taste and scent, with more of himself entering her orifice. Her tongue swirling around him as best as possible before. Glack 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 glack. Choking sounds eventually filled the air as Maleficent's moth was being assaulted. His member slowly being coated with her excess saliva, with her beginning to gargle more and more. Her head bobbing up and down, to and fro as she devoured his PP more and more. And this was all without Naruto forcing her down at all with a hand touching her head. This was all her. Goes to show how much of a dry spell she had to endure before quenching it after all these years. Her hunger and lust finally returning in full force. So good, out Naruto. So very good. Maleficent basked in the praise, increasing her effort to please her mate and true love. Mal, your moth is just as tight and warm as I remember, Naruto said, using his pet name for her, sending a shiver down her spine as couldn't take it anymore, and grabbed the back of her head as he started dominate her moth. Enjoy yourself, honey, he said with a down at Regina, who began feasting on Maleficent's PP with an even greater fervor, getting the dragon witch to in pleasure, sending vibrations up Naruto's PP due to it being lodged in her moth. Maleficent began working her head back and forth along Naruto's PP, taking it down to the base and deep into her mouth on her own as she felt her own CLMX approaching due to Regina's actions. See this enthusiasm, Naruto let go of the dragon witch's head and let her do it all herself, given her eagerness. Mal, your throa is tightening up too much, I think I am going to leak, Naruto said before once again grabbing the back of her head and burying his PP ball deep down her throa as it began to expand and thaw moments before it began firing rope after rope of thick creamy juice straight into her stomach, setting off her own orgasm and soaking Regina's face and hair with her juices. I never should have let you leave the DMN bed in my castle, Maleficent said, licking her lips of his juices and as Regina seemed more eager to eat her when she said that, as if giving her agreement. Oh, I seem to remember it being the other way around, Naruto says with a smirk. A minor detail now take me, however, before that there is something that needs to be taken care of, Maleficent says, climbing off of Regina's face, causing the queen to look up at her while panting. Take a seat over there, Regina, and watch as your husband claims me like he did all those years ago. Then if you're lucky and he has anything left when I am done, you can take a turn, Maleficent says with a slap to Regina's tips, making the queen before shimmying over to the side to watch. Maleficent then let out a yelp as she was forced to her hands and knees and felt Naruto slide along her slick PP with his PP. That is no way to talk to my wife, and I seem to recall you becoming my SBMSSV mate, Naruto says before giving Maleficent's thick peach a slap, making it jiggle and getting a loud from the dragon witch. Regina got even wetter as she loved that Naruto defended her and also dominated Maleficent. He couldn't stop making her more and more corny for him. However, she did keep you locked away in your dragon form for so long that she does deserve to be punished. So after I am done leaking you nice and deep, we are going to absolutely wreck her as her penance, Naruto says dominantly. Regina shuddered as Naruto always punished her whenever he found out about her misdeeds. She didn't know whether it was an incentive to do more bad things or if there was a greater reward for being nice. Kiss me F me like you did back then. Maleficent said, shaking her peach like a bee in heat, as the time she had been away from him was torture and she wanted to make up for lost time and craved being with him and feeling his touch. Naruto saw her thighs spread apart, prepared to be bred by his massive member. He stood over the top of Maleficent and looked down at her wet snatch, which was dripping onto the bed, slowly creating a damp puddle of her juices. He leaned down and turned her head to look at him over her shoulder as he gave her a hungry kiss, which she returned with gusto. His tongue retracted from her mouth, leaving a saliva trail which broke moments later. His tongue soon trailed down her exposed flesh, from her jawline, down her throat, before reaching her shoulder, which he bit into, not hard enough to break her skin but hard enough that it sent a shiver down her spine from the dominating action. Her pleasure was only doubled when he slammed his pee-pee ball deep into her needy pee-pee with a single savage move that sent her rocking forward, her large melons actually slapping her in the chin due to the force of the move as a scream of pleasure tore itself from her throat. The dragon which screamed over and over as she felt every nerve of her body overflow with pleasure from her mate claiming her for the first time in decades. With every pistoning in and out of her, she felt her breath occasionally leave her entirely, given how much force he's putting into the thrsts. Maleficent began to thrash about on the bed, him pushing her over the edge but not quite enough, which eventually drove her insane. Over and over she would near her. Peek and would leak with a single move of crashing over it into the abyss of pleasure, only to be denied as Naruto would stop thirsting and instead start massing and roughly grpng her melons as he chewed on her collarbone area. The constant denial of her CLMX began to get to her as she would begin trying to work her peach back to achieve her orgasm, only for it to be denied as Naruto would stop grpng her melons and instead hold her peach in place while also forcing her face down into the bed in a showing of pure demps. Please my mate, let me leak. I need to feel you filling my deepest depths with your alpha juices as I leak. Maleficent the dragon with the MSTRS of evil begged with all her being. Given such a passionate and heartfelt plea, I would have to be a monster to deny such a request, especially from my CC dragon, Naruto said as he began to savagely move into Maleficent. With each move he would pull out until only the tip of his PP was still inside of her before thirsting in with a brutal move that caused her peach to ripple and sent shockwaves up her body, filling the air with a mighty clap as if someone had been slapped. The force of the move shook the entire bed, making the wooden legs creak and the head to slam against the wall. Over and over he repeated these absolutely brutal dominating thrsts, the sight of which actually shocked Regina from where she watched. All Maleficent could do was grip the bed sheets with such force her knuckles turned white as she tried to hold on. My God, he is going to shatter my peach, was the sole thought running through her mind. Take it, Maleficent. Naruto roared before with a final move he buried himself ball deep, piercing her CRVX and slamming against the back of her WMB before he began filling it with rope after rope of his juice, causing said dragon witch's own massive orgasm. Hi-ya! Maleficent let out an ear-piercing scream of pleasure as every nerve of her body fired in pleasure, her eyes rolling up into her head and her tongue hanging out of her mouth as her back arched and she stared vacantly. The dragon woman's body spasmed on the bed, feeling the intense orgasm, her being re-broken from this encounter. They're animals. Regina thought, whimpering slightly at the sight as she remembered she was at their mercy. They are going to destroy me, she realized, yet felt not fear but instead anticipation. Reaching down, Naruto gave Maleficent's peach a slap, making it jiggle and causing her to as she focused on him. No falling asleep yet, my CC dragon, we still have to punish Regina, Naruto said with a smirk. Hearing this seemingly snapped Maleficent out of her pleasure-induced stupor before she gained a predatory grin. Why yes my mate, thank you for reminding me. Now let us begin with her punishment, shall we? She says as she uses her magic to conjure up a dragon-themed strap-on the same size and thickness of Naruto's PP and puts it on. I'm gonna die. Regina thought as these two would wreck her. I was their pet, she thought as she remembered how both of them put her in her place, and that was separately, together would be the end of her, of that she had no doubt. Now honey, despite this being your punishment, I will give you a choice. I can F your PP or your peach. Whichever one you have me F. Keep in mind Maleficent will take the other, Naruto says as he walked over to her and picked her up before tossing her onto the bed next to Maleficent, getting a yelp from her. I'll take her peach Mstr, Maleficent said, not giving Regina a chance to decide. I want to spank and be as rough as possible with it, she said as she fully intended to make Regina's peach as sore as possible. Well, it seems like due to you not speaking up quick enough the choice was strppd from you. Now let us begin, Naruto said as he lined up his PP with her dripping PP before slamming into her, getting a loud from her. Maybe you should knock her up again and make these melons fill with milk. Maleficent said, grabbing Regina's melons and squeezed tightly, making them sqr a little milk. Yes. Give me another baby to spoil. Regina said as she felt her babies were leaving the nest and she wanted to nurture. Well, you heard her, so give it to her. Maleficent said while feeling slightly jealous and hormonal, thinking about their lost daughter. I would love nothing more than to fill you with my juice and knock you up again, Regina. To see your belly swell as the life of another one of our children once more grows within again. However, with everything going on, this is not the time for another child, Naruto says, pulling her head to his and claiming her lips in a passionate kiss. Regina both understood and whined slightly, as with their missing daughter she more than understood, but she still craved a child. We'll get Tsunade back and he will knock me up repeatedly, she thought, as when they got their daughter back and they showered her with affection, she dragged Naruto to their bed and ride him till her peach shattered. As hot as it is to see you two connect, it's time I joined in, Maleficent said as she lined the strap-on up with Regina's tight peach and move in with a single move while gripping her leaking tips from behind, tightly spraying milk all over Naruto's chest. Just as I remember you, Regina, she said, as this was why she never killed Regina. Even after all her betrayals, there was no better SECSLV than her, and she made sure Regina was punished and paid her back. The sudden intrusion into her unprepared peach resulted in Regina screaming into Naruto's mouth in pleasure as she started to be rocked back and forth from both of her holes being filled. Naruto and Maleficent, without saying a word to each other, had synced up their rhythms to where whenever Naruto moved in, Maleficent would pull out and vice versa. However, so as to not let Regina get used to the move and predict them, Naruto and Maleficent would also swch things up and randomly start thrusting and pulling out at the same time, making Regina's pleasure-soaked body jolt up and down from the powerful sync THRSTS. You know, if not for your daughter and son, we would have you on all fours naked in this house pleasuring us. Maleficent said as she was slightly mad she couldn't be naked as she used to be naked in her castle very often, and Naruto and Regina did it before they had kids. Never forget, Regina, you are a pet made for F and made to serve us and tend to our needs, she said with a sadistic grin whispering into her ear. For what felt like hours and was in fact hours, Naruto and Maleficent dominated Regina. She was merely a piece of pleasure-flooded PP between them as they took her holes non-stop and roughly. Here it leaks, Regina, Maleficent said, increasing the rate of her thrusting as Naruto did the same before with a draconic roar and a beastly roar. The two did one final massive move into Regina before leaking their respective juices into her. Regina screamed in pleasure as her PP flooded with Naruto's scorching juice that flooded every nook and cranny of her WMB and PP as it clamped down on him. Meanwhile, her peach was shockingly filled with a liquid as well that, while not as hot as Naruto's juice, was still warm and flooded her tight peach. However, the former evil queen wasn't able to ponder how such a thing was possible for much longer as she was knocked unconscious from the pleasure, rendering her twitching body limp in between Naruto and Maleficent. Well, it would seem the pleasure was too much for her, Maleficent said with a cocky smirk at seeing Regina pass out. The Dragon Witch then pulled out of the knocked-out woman's peach with some difficulty as it had tightened around the fake dragon PP, though ultimately it gave way and she was able to remove the still leaking toy from Regina's peach, causing it to splurt on her cheeks and lower back. Seeing the leaking PP, Naruto raised an eyebrow. That's a pretty interesting toy you go there. How does it work? He asked. Oh, it's just something I whipped up after you left that first time back in the enchanted forest. As for how it works, it has a hollow tube that allows my juices to flow into it and be stored up ready to be released whenever I wish. However, I must admit that while I had it modeled in size and thickness after your PP, I was unable to make it match your massive releases, Maleficent says with a coy smirk as she ran her hand up and down the toy with a while giving Naruto a sultry look. Well, I hope you're ready, Mal, you know how I can be. Naruto said, gesturing to his still rock-hard member. Oh, believe me darling, I remember how you can be and I wouldn't change a single thing, Maleficent says before they lay Regina down on the bed next to them before launching themselves at each other in a primal lust-fueled haze. Next morning. Maleficent and Naruto were still currently feverishly while Regina in a pleasured haze was laying on the bed covered in the bodily juices of all three. Maleficent was especially happy as when they finished with Regina, Naruto had given her a ring symbolizing their love. He even told her that no wife would be superior to him and he'd love them equally. I believe he has a werewolf, she thought, as if Regina dominated her she should be easy. I hope you are ready, Mal, I'm still very corny. Naruto said with a grin as despite the hours and hours the two had been at it since Regina fell asleep he was still raring to go. Maleficent whimpered slightly as her holes felt raw and very abused and she still became aroused by his claim, you clearly shall need more women mstr more to satisfy you, but for now F me till your needs are sated even if I pass out use my body, she said as she only wanted to please Naruto, nothing more nothing less. You might get knocked up. Naruto said to her teasingly, feeling her tense. Do it. Maleficent said as if he gave her another child she wouldn't let what happened to her first happen again and she wouldn't stop till she found out what happened to her child. As you wish, Naruto said, increasing the rate and force of his pending, causing stars to appear in Maleficent's vision before with a final mighty move and a dominating growl his PP throbbed and expanded as it pierced into her WMB, locking itself in there as it began firing its potent juice into her in a continuous massive stream. He just won't ever stop. Maleficent thought as her body twitched in pleasure, our baby, she thought, feeling his juice in her WMB traveling through her tubes and flooding her completely. I'll find you my child, she thought as she thought to her child she lost, and I intend to take the charming's child. She thought to herself as Emma Swan has caught her attention and she was planning to use the girl and have her serve her MSTR as the justice she was deserved for the charming's cruel and inhumane action. Don't worry, Regina. You will have a pet of your own, she thought, knowing there was tension between both Emma and Regina over Henry. She knew Regina would love to see Emma submit to their love. As Maleficent shook in pleasure, continuing to feel herself be impregnated once more by her mate, her thoughts once more drifted to their first child who was lost to them. I swear on my magic your father and I will find you, and when we do we will finally be the family we should have been all along, and you'll have a sibling waiting. She thought as she finally succumbed to the pleasure, falling into a dream-filled sleep of a future where her family was finally whole and happy. Naruto, seeing that his dragon mate had fallen asleep in his arms, simply smiled before laying down on the bed, pulling her with him and having her rest on his chest, the two still connected at the hip. Reaching over he grabbed the sleeping Regina and pulled her to his side where she instinctively cuddled against him with a blissful sigh before Naruto let sleep claim him as well. Outside Maine. Lilith, a woman with pitch black hair and a rather unique star mark on her wrist, felt something fill her chest. It was something that made her want to break down in tears as she didn't want the feeling to end. She ran into a familiar face recently and he gave her something she had been missing for a long time and gave her some information that made her afraid and happy. Her parents were looking for her and they not only loved her but always had. She was also told about her father and she was afraid to meet him as the apprentice had told her of who her father was, and after so much darkness she didn't know if she could meet him. Several hours later, Storybrooke. The three lovers were finally waking up from their marathon of SEC with Regina Bane the first to awaken and see Naruto and Maleficent still joined at the hip. No way in hell is she not PRGN, and after all that, Regina thought in amusement, especially at how the dragon witch's belly was slightly distended due to the sheer amount of juices that had been pumped into her WMB. Where are you, baby girl? She thought, actually hoping Snow White was alright as for all the faults and mostly gone anger she had toward her. She knew Snow wouldn't let anything happen to her child, and if she did, BLD would rain from the skies till she killed Snow and whomever caused her baby harm. Morning, dear, Regina heard breaking her from her thoughts of potential murder, causing her to look over to her smiling husband. Smiling herself, she leaned over and gave him a love-filled good morning kiss. Good morning to you too, honey. I take it you had fun after I passed out, judging from Maleficent's state, Regina says with her usual smirk. Naruto chuckled at this. Yeah, we might have gotten a bit wild, he says with a grin and a rub along Maleficent's back, getting a from her. Oh, that is an understatement if this bed is any indication, Regina says, looking at the utter mess that was their bed, large puddles of dried juice, both his and theirs, several spots where the blankets were shredded from what looked like claw marks. Is the pet back talking to her masters? Maleficent says with a smirk and chuckle, having finally woken up her body sore in the most wonderful way. Oh, laugh while you can, lizard bee, it won't be long before I am back on top and you will be under me. In fact, maybe when I have you under me I will get a tail for you and use it on your peach, Regina says with a confident smirk. If you want to be on top, Regina, I may allow it, but it still won't change your position in this relationship, Maleficent said in amusement. Ladies get along, Naruto said with a stern commanding voice that sent pleasurable shivers down their spines. Oh, we are darling, just some competitive smack talk, Maleficent says with a smirk. Yes, love, just some playful banter, Regina adds with a similar smirk. Being competitive is all well and good. In fact, I think it would be healthy for the two of you given the tension still between you. However, if you take it too far then I will step in, and I can assure you that you don't want that to happen, Naruto said sternly, getting nods from the two causing him to smile. Now, as much fun as it would be to spend the whole in bed, we have stuff to do, so let's go get cleaned up in the shower, and if we hurry we might have time for some quick fun in the shower, Naruto adds on as he reaches down and gropes their peaches, getting from them. This man is too good for me and will ruin us with pleasure, the two ladies surprisingly thought, sharing the same thinking. The two then let out a yelp as Naruto sat up, pulling out of Maleficent's stuffed lady lips in the process before standing up, and carried them under each arm towards the shower so they could get clean, then dirty, then clean again, so as to start the day with Tsunade. You know everyone wants to kill me, right? Tsunade said as she had gotten many looks, as it was known she was Kora's granddaughter and Regina's daughter, neither title very popular here as both women of her family did a lot of CRP to these people. Emma wanted to deny that, but she couldn't lie to her. I won't let that happen, she said to her, ruffling the girl's hair. So my lady, Lancelot said, looking at her curiously. How is the evil queen, I mean your mother, he said, getting looks from Snow and Emma. She's okay, Tsunade said to him. I'll be back, she said, disappearing in smoke much like pretty much ever magic user. Where the hell did she go? Emma asked, looking around trying to spot her. Everyone froze when many loud roars and screams were heard in the distance. Ogre Lancelot was saying till a large amount of green smoke appeared and a pile of ogres with Tsunade on top. I win, Tsunade said, covered in blood. You were gone not 2 minutes, Emma said in shock like everyone else. And I killed 40 ogres, Tsunade said, getting many cheers and praise. My such skill, Lancelot said in shock. Thanks, I get it from my dad, Tsunade said proudly. Is her father this vicious, Lancelot said as Kora in her cell contemplated if she acted too rashly in the past. Yes/no, Tsunade and the charming women said, getting odd looks. My dad can fight, he is strong, Tsunade said proudly. Can anyone with magic do something like that, Emma asked her mother. Snow didn't have a true answer, as the only thing she knew for fact was that many years ago Rumpelstiltskin was known for killing an army of which spanned somewhere in the hundreds. To see Tsunade do a similar feat was slightly scary. Her father is very skilled, Mulan said, knowing much of Naruto's past, or at least what he remembered. With Kora, things are not what they seem. Kora thought, feeling that she needed to play a different game or adjust her plans, as if what Tsunade said was true. Few days later. Any ideas so far, Naruto said, giving David some whiskey. No, David said in exhaustion. How's Henry, he asked, as while he assumed he was doing well with Regina's reform, having a daughter and having her true love back made her less hostile. He's having a tough time, Naruto said, as Henry was a child of two worlds, not knowing his place in the world. Let me tell you something, if Henry didn't gain an open perspective he'd be hard-headed like his father and grandfather, he said teasingly, as Henry, while good, was too brash. Don't forget his mother and grandmother, as Emma and Snow are just as hard-headed as you and I, Charming said with a chuckle, getting one from Naruto, as well as the two continued to drink and chat. 2 hours later. Here Granny, Naruto said, slipping her a $200 bills. Can I just point out this is dumb, he said to her as Red was sleeping in the freezer due to it being the full moon. She never trusted herself even after she learned control. Granny said, never pushing the issue given her granddaughter ate the first man she loved. How's the search? She said, wanting to see all four made it home safely. I'll let you know when I am more sober, Naruto said as he and David had Nada with the hat. Granny could hardly blame him for getting slightly smashed, as when she was separated from Ruby she was terrified for her. With Tsunade. You are either very brave or very crazy, Tsunade said as she turned around to see Kora. If you think I'm gonna buy that nice grandma CRP, you are dumber than you look. Go near me or my family or hell hurt those idiots and I'll kill you, she said as she let out some killing intent, but to her surprised Kora was unfazed. She's different, she thought, as Kora was not normal. First of all, language, young lady, I highly doubt Regina lets you talk that way. Secondly, you should reconsider, granddaughter. Kora was saying till a dagger cut her cheek. I don't care, Tsunade said in a neutral tone. F what you think, F what you want, F you're crazy insane be peach, and F everything you stand for. You hurt my family and that alone calls for your death, so try me B, I'll kill you, she said, eager to do that very act. Kora was both impressed and furious by her granddaughter. Oh, and also you are no queen, cause the Queen of Hearts is a B, she always dies, she is always a hag, and most of all she is pathetic, so you live up to the standard. Where, Tsunade said, smiling as the woman disappeared in anger. Now she's gonna kill me, she thought, as at the very least the woman was gonna try and manipulate her via heart ripping. Good thing mom thought ahead and warded my heart just like she did dad, so that only she can rip out our hearts, she thought as her mother was cautious. When she got her magic back and enchanted the family with various protections to magics she and Rumple commonly used. Next day. Ruby, this wasn't you, Naruto said to the crying werewolf. How do you know? This is just like whenever I lost control, Ruby yelled in tears after they had found her friend Billy, who was actually one of Cinderella's mouse friends named Gus, who had been turned into a human when the curse was cast. Gus/Billy had gone missing the previous night, and after some searching his truck was found by the dock, so Naruto, Ruby, and David had headed over to see if he was there. However, upon arriving and seeing his truck, Ruby had picked up the scent of BLD, which led them to the mutilated body of the former mouse, now man. From the looks of it, he had seemingly been ripped apart by an animal, given the slashes on his body, which was not only in multiple pieces scattered around the dock, but also the fact that his guts had been spread around, and several key organs like his liver, which is among the first things a predator eats after making a kill, were missing. Well, unless you suddenly gained the ability to cut as a wolf, this corpse was sliced and diced, Naruto said, as the head alone was a clear sign as it was decapitated. Look at the bones, these were done by a sword or an axe, not your wolf teeth or claws, he said, as he was sure that was the weapon, as it was something pretty much everyone in town knew how to use. Ruby walked closer to Gus' corpse and looked at his torn off limbs, and holding in her bile she saw Naruto was right, all his wounds were done by a sharp weapon. He's right, David said, feeling dumb not seeing it sooner. Yeah, and Ruby, to add insult to injury, we have all his pieces, he's not been chewed on, as there are no teeth. Mark, this was a murder, plain and simple, made to look like you killed him, but you're in the clear, Naruto said, restoring her peace of mind. So who did this? David asked him. Check the truck, Gus wouldn't to the docks, Naruto said, as the truck was placed here and he was sure no one here was clever enough to hide their tracks. Listen, Ruby, I'll be back. Bell said someone broke into Gold's shop the other day, he said, as Gold was with Bell and contacted him. Ruby, now much more calm, nodded, understanding that he needed to go. Thank you, she said to him, giving him a peck on the cheek before he left. Few minutes later. Okay, Spill, you're not one to not take advantage. Did you have Ruby's cloak? Naruto asked, away from Bell. And what, pray tell, do I hope to gain? Rumple asked him, raising a brow. Well, for one, I won't get mad. And it would be some major brownie points with Bell if she were to find out you helped one of her friends, Naruto countered as he crossed his arms. Rumple sighed, as this would actually help him, as he hated being robbed from and knew Naruto would at least kill the thief, given it seemed like the person was trying to frame someone Naruto cared about. He explained he had most magical items that came over in the curse, including Ruby's cloak, as he always liked a bargaining chip. Apparently Rumple had briefly taken down the wards protecting his shop in order to recharge and maintain them. Then when he went in the back of his shop to get some supplies, and when he came back, one of the panes of glass on his door had been broken and the cloak was missing. Few hours later. Do you think George did this? Naruto asked, as it was hard to tell if D-heads were involved, as they either did things to be PP or had some kind of plan. What's he get from attacking Ruby? David said as George was an evil man and while he chose direct and indirect methods of attack he always went to him or Snow. I got nada, Naruto said as he saw no point for this from George as it made little sense. Where's Ruby? David asked curiously seeing the sun set in the distance. The woods. She agreed to go there to be safe since she feels better. No one died by her hand last night, Naruto said as while Gus' death was alarming he assured her of who she was as both human and wolf. They were interrupted when they heard a howl and a screaming crowd. I forget how determined and hard-headed she is, Naruto said as even as a wolf Ruby was still herself with all her habits and other qualities. With Tsunade. Hey kid, are you okay? Emma asked as Tsunade was on her knees panting looking like she was hyperventilating. No, something is wrong, Tsunade said as she felt something arise in the pit of her stomach. Emma. Get back. Snow yells as she recognizes what is happening with Tsunade. Emma looked at her mother and back to Tsunade, but instead of Tsunade was a small wolf pup and it was growling before it howled loudly and soon magic began to act rather destructive in the area as the ground trembled and a few trees combusted for no apparent reason and in a flash of light Tsunade was gone. Okay, Regina is going to kill us, Emma said after seeing that Tsunade was gone. Storybrooke. King George had seen many things in his time but a wolf popping out of the hat he just this second stole was surprising. With Naruto. Tsunade, Naruto said in surprise as he sensed his daughter. George has the hat, he said in anger sensing whom his daughter was near. Before either men could say anything they were shocked when they saw a small wolf pup dragging a very wounded King George looking happy and excited based on her tail wagging. Tsunade, Naruto asked getting a small bark. Was she bit? David asked wondering how that happened. I don't have no clue, Naruto said as Tsunade felt no different than when she left and didn't quite feel like Ruby. Both men were caught off guard when the wolf pup ran. Where's she going? David asked before his question was answered with a howl. I'll handle him, go save her, he said to him glad Tsunade saved the hat and enjoyed the fact that George was clawed and ripped by the wolf pup. With Ruby. Ruby in her wolf state was slightly afraid as she felt her nose get bopped by a wolf pup. Tsunade ate Ruby's face happy to see her again growling in happiness. Ruby whimpered as she saw the mob spot her and moved back in fear. Tsunade felt rage and despite being smaller than how she normally was it did nothing to reduce her boldness or her temper that she had gotten from her parents. It's another beast. We need to kill it. Exterminate the beasts. End them. Ruby growled as she may have been afraid but she was not about to let them harm Tsunade. She's a child and they want to harm her, she thought, no longer feeling less of herself. Tsunade barked, still unafraid of them, but soon lowered her head as a wolf. She felt the appearance of a superior predator close in. Ruby not a second later felt what Tsunade felt and looked back and saw Naruto, and his appearance was soon followed by Kurama, both of them having glowing red eyes looking at the mob. The F did you just say you wanted to do to my daughter? Naruto said in a deathly tone. Kurama approached Tsunade and petted her head with his paw and nuzzled against her snout with his own and then glared at the crowd. King George killed Gus, Ruby is innocent and you all have the gall to threaten harm to a child. My child, Naruto said, seeing the people struggling to breath beginning to fear him more than they ever feared Regina. Child murderers is what you all are, he said, as they deserved that name, as anyone willing to harm a child was some to him. Tsunade, he said looking at his daughter, pride beaming from his eyes, you protected Ruby, you're so brave, he said as his daughter made him very proud today. Looking over to Ruby he nodded to her. Ruby, you take Tsunade and head home. I am sure Regina will be delighted. I need to have a talk with our townspeople, he says, getting a nod from Ruby before she picked up Tsunade with her moth. The two werewolves and Kurama ran to Naruto's house. Seeing them gone, Naruto then turned his attention to the mob. I am only going to say this once, so you had all better listen up. From here on out there will be no more angry mobs, no more street justice, and no more attempted lynching. All law enforcement is to be left in the hands of the sheriff's office. Anyone who breaks this law will not only answer to the sheriffs but also to me. Punishment for breaking this law will range on the severity of the crime, ranging from jail time, prison, to actual execution if the crime warrants it. Make no mistake, people, I take no pleasure in having to make this law. But it seems the faith I had in all of you to act as civilized and decent human beings was misplaced, he says, laying down the law before walking away, leaving many to look down in shame or mutter. Few minutes later. This is so weird, Regina said, looking at her daughter and Ruby doing dog activities as they ran around the yard and peed on her apple tree repeatedly and all over the place as if marking their territory, and were now playing fetch with a ball. Yeah, you have any answers how the hell this is possible? Naruto asked as he was still surprised Tsunade was a wolf. Ruby has never been near Tsunade as a wolf, Regina said as her daughter brought her a ball which she threw a good distance. Could it be your mother? Naruto asked her curiously. I'd love to say yes, but no, this is not her MO, Regina said as she even called Blue, and she said Tsunade was not bit or a werewolf despite the girl licking the fairy's face and later stealing her wand. Ruby's certainly having fun, Naruto said as the woman seemed to imprint on Tsunade via wolf nature. I did the first time I met her, Maleficent said, hiding her nature from people as she slightly altered her appearance in order not to be discovered as she preferred to work from the shadows. Do we need to be worried? Regina said as her mother being alive was not ideal at all, in fact she was motivated to re-kill the woman for even looking at her daughter. So long as she stays in the enchanted forest it isn't an issue, Naruto said with a shrug. You forget Charming is still trying to bring them back, Maleficent said as she had few dealings with Kora and the woman was not pleasant. And knowing Kora she will find a way to either tag along when Emma, Snow, and Mulan return or find a way on her own, Naruto said with a sigh as he pinches the bridge of his nose. I'll kill her, Regina said to them, I will rip her apart and destroy every last trace of her. She took my husband from me, had the gall to talk to my daughter, had the gall to threaten her, no more. My mother will perish. I don't care, she can rot in hell, and I will personally SHT on her grave, she said angrily. Hot goal there honey, but we need to do more than just vent. Maleficent, do you think that you and Regina combined could take on Kora or up with a plan to counter her? Naruto asks. Yeah, if it came down to a straight fight I think that our chances would be about 50-50, maybe 70-30ths if we got the jump on her. As for ways to counter her, there are potentially several but could take some time to implement, Maleficent said as she knew that Kora was of a class similar to Rumple and she was of a similar class, even having ways to cheat death herself. Next day. Why the FIS she still AF dog, Regina said as Tsunade was still a wolf looking excited and happy. Because she is choosing to be. Ruby says sheepishly while rubbing the back of her neck. Two things, I want her normal and I want those clothes back later, Regina says looking over to Ruby who was borrowing some of her clothes briefly due to hers being shredded. Seriously, why are all your thongs so tight? Ruby said, thinking this was why Regina was such a B. Mainly because Naruto loves how they show off my peach. But back to the main issue, what do you mean my daughter is choosing to stay as a dog right now? Regina says. I've never dealt with this. I mean, yeah, I knew she could transform. SHT, Ruby said as she looked at Tsunade who was eating some out of a bowl. Wolfie, you have all of a minute to explain yourself, and that is me being generous due to you being so good at eating PP, Regina says while narrowing her eyes dangerously. Hey sweetie, Naruto said picking up his daughter who looked happy to see him. Mind changing back? I think you're worrying your mom, he said as he saw her lower her ears as if she was pouting. Hey, he said tickling her belly making her growl happily. Oh thank God, Regina said no longer seeing her daughter having any fur. Come on, let's go see your brother, Naruto said as Henry wasn't filled in last night and it was time to do so. Ruby seeing Regina distracted tried to sneak away only to freeze in place as she couldn't move. Just where do you think you are going? I want answers and you have them, so spill or I cut you off from my husband for several months, Regina said with sneer. Okay, but before that I have a question. How do you keep your clothes? Ruby said seeing Tsunade kept her clothing. I'm not a pervert, Tsunade said puffing her chest out not knowing how powerful her words were. She's right, only a pervert would willingly choose to lose their clothing, Maleficent said making Ruby deflate more. Ruby deflated as whenever she changed back to human and was left naked, and in the rare moments she was seen, people either perved on her or women called her aware. Oh cheer up, so you have a bit of a nudist streak in you, big deal. Hell, I used to walk around my castle naked the majority of the time just because I felt like it. Heck, both Regina and Naruto joined me on separate occasions, Maleficent said with a grin. We can be naked, Tsunade asked as everyone gave her a look. No. Regina and Naruto yelled at the same time, if anyone sees you naked they'll be put in the ground, they said as if anyone saw their baby girl in her most sacred state death would be their reward. Anyway, back to the topic at hand, would you care to share why it seems like you were aware of our daughter's ability to transform? Regina says, changing the topic. I just thought it was fun to have a little companion, it was our little secret, Ruby said as she explained how she never knew how it happened but just ran with Tsunade often. Yeah, it was like a prank. Tsunade chimes in with a smile. CRP, it's genetic, Naruto thought in worry as this may have been his fault. Turning to look at her husband, Regina leveled him with a flat stare. I blame you for this, she simply stated, causing him to slump. Great, SEC has to have a price, Maleficent said, chuckling under her breath. Med doesn't seem like too bad a price given the SEC, Ruby says with a shrug. Okay, enough talking of SEC, as keep in mind there is still a child in the room, Regina says, turning her attention back to Maleficent and Ruby. What's SEC? Tsunade asked as while her mind had much profanity language-wise she was still innocent. Hey, you chose girl, I chose boy. Also Tsunade, how about we go get some ice cream, Naruto said as he chuckled, getting a cheer from Tsunade as he quickly ushered them out of the room. DMN it, I should have picked boy, Regina said as she was about to ruin a lot of her daughter's innocence when they eventually had to have that talk. Hopefully the vast amount of ice cream she was about to unknowingly be bribed with would make her forget about her asking what a CC was. Regina suddenly facepalmed as she realized the ramifications of what that meant. F me, she is going to have such a sugar high, she thought, shuddering as she recalled the last time her daughter had a sugar high. She is certainly her father's daughter with that energy, she thought, as Tsunade had an abundance of energy which she assumed she got from her father. Later that day, a certain secret Snow which made a small fortune as a little girl ate much of her product, much more than her size should have permitted. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for more crossovers. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author pyrohelixdrago on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.